I'm Dr. Andrea Goeglein, and welcome back to Serving Your Success. Today with me, I have again Andrew Matthews and a new addition. Trey, why don't you tell everyone, one, your name, and two, what you do?
Okay, my name is Trey Huntley. I'm currently in the process of doing multiple things right now. My main thing is selling real estate here in Las Vegas, as well as working with
Successfully selling real estate, I might add.
As well as working with a nonprofit that I helped start a few years ago, and several other companies.
Okay, so he's being like way too modest out of the gate, so let me explain this to you. So you will remember in a few episodes back when Trey actually wasn't with us, but there was a whole group of my millennial clan, and Trey is the person who has set the goal that by the end of 2017, and I think I incorrectly said on that episode that it was 2018, but the end of 2017, correct? You will have 20 homeless people. Anything I say, you'll just go along with it. Sure, keep it going.
Yeah.
20 homeless people in housing and on the road to becoming employable.
Right.
Absolutely.
And plugged into a community.
And plugged into a community.
Not just living in a place, but feeling like they're a part of the community.
Perfect.
Part of the goal.
So now you understand why I think he's being a little mouse. I sell real estate, yeah. He sells a lot of real estate, and he does it very well. And what we're going to talk about today is actually the merging of generations in business and in the creation of the projects that you're trying to create in the world, no matter where you are on the generational spectrum. But what does it look like when you join together with the millennials and want to bring goals to fruition? We'll talk about them in business, we'll talk about them in community. Okay?
Sounds great.
And I need to do a little commercial break for a LinkedIn group called Millennial and Baby Boomers. And it was started by Jim Sugarman, and that's part of how this conversation got started, because Jim sent me over a study, The State of Entrepreneurship, out of the Kauffman Foundation of Entrepreneurship, and it specifically talked about what does each generation bring to the party, what do they want from each other, how to make it work the best. And that has been a whole part of what I care about and how I've always conducted my business. So let's just start there. Knowing what your business is, to be the known entity for telling stories of integrity and letting people's stories of who they are, what their businesses are, how they are in the world come to life. What does that look like when you merge? Do you want to do business with millennials? Like, what's it look like?
It's a huge merger of experience, really. A millennial not having so much experience and a veteran in business, like a baby boomer that's gone through, I don't know, maybe a career of 30, 40 years, just going through the works, right? And so you learn a lot from that. And when a millennial is entering the workspace, or he's becoming an entrepreneur by starting his own business, he doesn't know what to expect. And so what I see, the story there is someone mentoring a younger version of himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or herself.
Or herself, yeah.
Or herself. and I'll tell you that one of the things that you touched on, like, can you identify in yourself why you feel that they bring something versus what I know a lot of times will be said of your generation is that they think they know everything, which is pretty typical of most 20-year-olds. I mean, you've heard me say, I don't think that's unique to this generation. I think that's unique to being 20-something.
It's life.
Yes. You go through these phases where you absolutely believe that you know it all, and you know, teens to 20s is that point. What can you identify why you began to recognize maybe there's something else for me to learn here?
It definitely stemmed from me knowing everything and quickly realizing that I didn't know anything, right? And so I wanted to find someone that could guide me. I guess I set up a little system for me. Find someone that's 2 steps ahead of you, 1 step ahead of you, and someone that's in the trenches. Have those 3 best friends with you, and then you'll always be set. You'll always be planning for the future and focusing on the present. And so that's kind of like where I see that happening.
Okay, and just tell me, did you come by that naturally? Did you read about that? What was the deal?
I think because I read so much, I
Okay.
pieced that together. I feel like that was...
It's a blur to me too.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out
Right.
where you actually pick up something. So, for you, tell me where you are in that whole conversation of, do you avoid it? Do you look to bring older, wiser, more experienced people in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the main things for me, being around a lot of millennials, like when I first
Meaning your
moved to
peer group.
Vegas, my peer group,
Yeah.
I noticed that, you know, especially the people I like to associate with, they're very excited, have a lot of ideas,
Yeah.
and you get to the point where you're like, okay, all these ideas are really great, but where are we pulling these ideas from? You know, and I find that most people are, yes, or they're pulling from, so, okay, maybe they're pulling from somebody that they have seen that has been successful,
Correct.
and they're seeing the surface of what they're doing, and then they're saying, well, all we got to do is this, this, and this.
Yeah.
But what I found is that a lot of times there's a lot of legwork that goes into stuff that you don't see, that's not stuff that,
Yeah.
you know, people understand
Those-
because it's
20 and 30-year overnight successes.
right, and it's
Yeah.
stuff that you have to really go deeper in and see. Oh, okay. There's way more stuff that this person's doing. So for me, it became to the point where I was like, okay, there's stuff that I don't realize. There's stuff that I'm seeing that's not happening. Let me focus on the things that did, you know, come to fruition or that did happen, and kind of zero in on what are those things that make that stuff happen. And I find that a lot of times people get so fixated on, you know, the Facebook or the Uber or the fly-by-night, the stuff that just pops up, which
Right.
it's, you know, that can happen. I'm not going to say
Sure,
that it can't.
absolutely.
You know, the organic growth of just, wow, that just took off. But a lot of it, and this is why I got into real estate, was because I wanted to find an industry that I could learn practical business sales skills on how to grow stuff without having to recreate a market, recreate a platform, recreate something
That's why I
else.
went into franchising.
Right.
Honest to goodness. I was at a point in life when working for a company was not going to fit my life correctly. And I decided to go into franchising because it had a system. I didn't have to have those pains. It was already there. So
Right.
that's the same thing.
Right, and then it was interesting because I'll never forget when I first started real estate, an older guy, he told me, he said, Forrest Gump will always beat somebody. I don't even know who he said, but basically his point was this: you can be really trendy with technology, you can be super up to date, you can be super relevant, but at the end of the day, when it comes to sales, when it comes to business, the amount of people that you talk to, of just going up to somebody, hi, I'm Forrest, would you like to buy this? You know, basically, he said
You want to have a piece of chocolate?
he'll beat the slickest person ever if
Yes.
you talk to more people.
Correct.
And my thing is not like, let's get rid of the technology and let's do that. But my thing
Absolutely.
is, that is a fundamental background to everything that we do. It's the amount of people you reach, the amount that you know, the ability to get it out there to whatever it is with business, you know. And so that stuck with me.
Actually, I have something to add to that.
Yes.
I feel that baby boomers were like great salespeople of that format.
Sure.
Of going out and talking to people one by one. Enter video, where it does the same thing. It communicates to people, but on demand. Whenever they're ready to watch it, it's ready to go. And
Sure.
so we save a ton of time generating the same result, if not more, because we're able to scale the amount of attention we get by placing an ad against a video, targeting a specific audience of 30,000 people.
Sure.
So we can do a lot more with what we have, with what we know.
Right.
And that's where we add value to the baby boomer generation. We can give them those tools that we have,
Yeah.
and they can give us the experience.
Well, I would argue it's the same thing, because when you reach a mass number of people through video, what you're then doing is figuring out how to monetize those numbers, all the percentages of how many people from that amount are going to buy this, or going to purchase this, or going to be influenced by this. So then you structure it around, how can we reach, you know, X amount of people, or how can we do this? So it's like, I still feel like those two things work the same, right? Because you have to know how to take those numbers and do something with them. And that's the biggest thing that some millennials don't know. They're like, what do I do with all this?
One of the interesting ones about 20 years ago that I really was intrigued about was when the concept of reverse mortgage really took hold in the market. What the reverse mortgage bankers were doing was using very, very prestigious and trusted older actors. because the concept of what a reverse mortgage was is a legal entity, and you weren't about to teach the people who needed it what that actually was by having them read stuff, but they started doing a lot of video, and that attracted them in. One part of the system in general of meeting people that I think is slightly different today, we tend to be more heart-centered.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are plenty of people who will sell to anyone anything that they will buy, regardless of whether it's good or not. But I think that comes through on video quicker than anything else. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up in New York where there was this man, Fast Eddie, and he used to sell appliances. And he was not unethical in any way, but he had a real shtick when he was selling you these things. And we always used to make fun of him, but yet you knew where to go to get your appliances. So you both trusted him, and it was shticky. Today, I think that's slightly different. I don't think, or well, I don't need to think about it. You tell me. Are you attracted to that sales, that fast-talking sales person?
Go ahead, please. I have a lot to say.
The first thing that came to my mind was the way they're advertising on podcasts today. So a lot of people have podcasts, and they'll have different followings based on whatever they're talking about, essentially. And then a lot of times companies will go to these individuals and say, here's our product, will you advertise this product? I don't know if I read this as well, but I heard it somewhere. But also, and I once I read it, I realized, and I could always hear it, but it's even more. And they said that basically with the way that they deliver, like if you know it's a commercial, it's going to be less effective as somebody saying, man, I just tried this product. Actually, seriously, this is a really good product. Like, I really enjoy it, and it's actually worked for my life, adds tremendous value. You should check this out. Right. Instead of saying what it is, the relationship that the person talking about it has. So I find that those advertisements, to me, or if I really feel like a person that is advertising it actually uses it, or actually like backs it up, which goes back to what you're saying, is this something that they're just selling because somebody's paying them money, or is this a company that they use and align with and find value in? Yeah, you can sell it quicker. And
hold your thought, because I have my niece Cara Trezano she does a bunch of videos on Facebook where she premieres products, makeup products, and she's quite gifted at being able to put on makeup, but she will actually be telling you what she likes about the product or doesn't like about the product, which ones, and she goes about, and I know that has been a trend in younger people when it comes to makeup, that they have been using actual young adults, teenagers, to introduce the product lines and actually have them talk about it, how's it used. So now, what was your contribution?
Just to touch on that, Instagram is a very big network where influencers have a platform to engage with advertisers. So if they want to tap into their influential circles of their network to suggest a product or a piece of makeup or whatever it is, there's a high success rate of sales being generated from those campaigns. And so that's very effective, in case anyone wants to do that. But yeah, so could you just repeat the question for me?
Okay, so part of it was with the heart. When there had been a time where salespeople, the type that was collect as many names as possible kind of salesperson, they were a bit sticky. There wasn't a level of authenticity. You knew you were a number to someone like that. Does video, is that appealing to your generation, or does video kind of weed that out?
Oh, it certainly is appealing. I watch video every day, a lot of it actually, and what's the most effective to me is seeing or following someone that's consistent at publishing video. So consistently telling a story and doesn't waver off, so I can follow that. A good example is Gary Vaynerchuk, Casey Neistat. They've been telling stories via video for a consistent amount of time, and I've been able to follow through. If I meet Casey or Gary today, I feel like I can recount their last 3 weeks and say specific things about a lunch meeting they have, you know? So the level of documentation is really intense. So when you have someone like that being super authentic and transparent, how do you compare it to a sales video? hey, do you want to buy my house, or do you want to buy my car?
Right.
There's no value being transferred. I don't know you, so I want to get to know you.
Okay, so then this is clearly, you have to help me with this generationally, because I love seeing all the various videos, but I'll watch like one little piece and then I'll start to watch a few, and then I wonder, why am I watching their life instead of living mine?
Because you're watching 8 minutes worth of video, and that 8 minutes is the person's 24 hours, so it's just 8 minutes of the day. Instead of me watching a 1 hour show on Suits or whatever it is that's on TV,
Okay.
Billions, I just do an 8 minute video on demand, YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, all right. It helps me understand better. I'm not sure I will get there, but I did begin to have that feeling like, why exactly am I
Yeah.
watching about this person's life? And believe me, a lot of people have their lives
Yeah.
being recorded, and many of them not good enough. You know,
But I will say this, though. I mean, it's hard to speak for an entire
Yeah.
populace.
Yes,
Like,
they-
you know, I mean,
Yes.
the millennials. This is how we feel.
no,
Like, I don't.
no.
I don't know.
And
But
Go ahead.
I will say that, you know, one of the things I have noticed with the videos, and there's a few guys, I won't even mention names, not that it matters, but they're just as cheesy and they're just as superficial as in a new context. Like there's a guy that he does videos in front of cars and books all the time, and he pays for advertising, and
Right.
then he's like, if you want to know the 3 secrets to, you know, becoming everything you've ever wanted to be, do this. And it's kind of that raw. It's a similar raw, like it's just me with my selfie cam. Like
Yeah.
it's very similar to the videos he's talking about that are actually more authentic and more like this is just me doing my thing. But it's using those, I guess, sleazy, I don't know,
Yeah.
sleazy, whatever. Those tactics of
Sticky.
like, you are missing something in your life.
right.
I can give it to you. Pay
Right.
me some money. And
Yeah.
it's still kind of like, and I think most millennials see through it. But then I will say this: there's a large majority of people that if you just use the Forrest Gump approach, you'll sell to them.
Yes.
And it's like, well, I mean, you know, I've learned that in real estate. There are, you know, there's a demographic in which you could just put a video out or do something that has no real value or no real context, and you'll get X amount of clicks, X amount of clients, X amount of sales. You know, they might not be as the type that you want or
Right.
the price range that you're looking for, whatever. But I do find that, and
Right.
I find that it changes with the demographic. Like my hiring clients, I don't find them through those online. I find them through face to face. I find them through referral. I find them through actually knowing a lot about an area, like deeper stuff.
Right. Yeah, because I know I'm clicking through on the realtor emails that come through with the videos of people I already know.
Right.
I'm not actually doing it for ones that I don't know. Now, there's an interesting part, because I know, thanks to you, I know Casey's work now, and I do agree. What it appears he's showing you how to live life, build businesses, do things, and he's capturing all of that in a small amount of time.
Yeah, I feel like when I watch his videos, I'm going to school.
Right.
School
No,
life,
I
in a
have
sense,
to
yeah.
say that I definitely took that away. Whether I watched one where his wife and a partner was starting a business, and so he was going there brainstorming with them. Yeah, so of course you know that he's also promoting that business, but the other side of it was he was showing when you're creating events that attract attention, these are the things, because he then outlined what you, like, he was the brainstormer and he outlined those things. Now, coming through the nonprofit world into the profit world, obviously you were an anomaly in the nonprofit world. Everyone you were dealing with was probably a lot older. Am I wrong?
Now, well, I don't know. The core group of people, we were all younger.
Okay.
But the people that really helped us get it off the ground were older.
And that's the
So,
point. So when you join with people multi-generationally, and you, Trey, you should know that when Kate's here, the joke that I always tell is whenever I ask her a question, I say, now would you please answer for the 77 million people in your generation? We know that that's a joke. We know, and everyone knows who watches this particular segments, my segments, what it is. You know, the people I attract actually have a different energy level, not to use a cliche, but they are very involved in their lives. They take responsibility for wanting to create something. They may not know how to do it, and they may blow as much smoke as everyone else. But the truth is, as you were saying, when your friends come together, you realize that they're saying a lot of things, but when are we going to do something? Well, I have a tendency of attracting in those people. There's a reason why you guys are here. There's a reason why Kate's here. It's a reason why the people that hang out with me, because they would feel odd if they didn't start progressing their own lives. Because it's like, well, everybody else is doing it. Why don't I do that?
Right.
So I do respect very much. We're talking from a perspective, and I will call it of privilege, but it's the privilege of having enough education and taking responsibility for your own learning. And that's a privilege anyone, and that's I think the beauty of video. At this point, there is no longer a barrier to entry, because you can go to a library and the same exact things on YouTube are free to me as they are to someone living on the street.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you expect? Like, what do you look for outside of your generation when you want to partner with them?
So I believe that people that are 10, 20, 30 years in front of me have made connections. And connections take a very long time to build. When you get a warm introduction to someone, you've inherited all of that work that the person did. And and in so many ways it's a gift, but it's also a responsibility.
You're not like, I will never use my personal collateral and recommend you to see someone if I don't think that I can trust you in that, because I already know who they are.
Yeah, so like you're vetting.
Exactly. No, and that is so that's absolutely,
as you should, to keep the quality there.
Well, you don't want to ask someone to do something and waste their time.
Yeah.
Because they will remember that. They may like you and you may be their friend or their relative, but they will remember that you have wasted their time. And so of course you don't want to do that.
I agree.
So I think that is a critical aspect of it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then what do you see in return? Like, if someone gives you that, like, is there, do you actually actively keep in mind, I wonder how I can engage with that person or help them in what they're doing? Like, do you think that just because someone is ahead of you generationally and they've helped you, that you have resources to help them or not, or?
I think we, by default, think differently from them.
Okay.
And so there's natural curiosities, set from their standpoint and from our standpoint. And when we begin conversation, we quickly realize if we can connect with each other or not. And if we can, we start exploring what can be done. And I feel that's how I've connected with older generations. And because I grew up with brothers that are 10 years apart, I from the beginning, I started hanging out with people that were 10 years older than me. So I feel like people that are in their late 30s are kind of like how I think, mentally. And I love listening to oldies music. I love oldies music. Temptations, The Platters, what? And I feel that some people that are my age, to 28, don't really know who The Platters even is. And so from an early age, I learned how to, engage with older people. And so to me, it came naturally. Right?
Now, do you know who the Platters are because you live in Las Vegas, and no matter, they don't even have, any member has to still be alive, and we have the Platters.
The perks of Vegas.
Yeah. What about for you? What do you look for when you do attract in multi-generationally, and what do you believe you offer that relationship?
Well, I think that one of the main things that I keep thinking of right now as you're asking the question is this idea that I will say that I do factor in the whole, baby boomer age, millennial, somebody older, more resource. But honestly, it's, for me, the lens I think that I see things is just the level in which they've opened themselves up to experiencing life, like what you were talking about. Because, I traveled around for about a year off of $50, and I had no idea where I was going to go, what was going to happen.
Something that is totally outside my comprehension, just so you know.
But I will say, because I was in New York, New Orleans, Colorado, Los Angeles. I was in all these major cities, and I met different people, and they would all have different opinions, older, younger, and they'd say, oh, you can't do this, and you can't do that, or, oh, you could do this, you could do that. And I got a lot of, even older people, I met people that had traveled the world, older people that had been all these different places, and yet they still had such a small way of looking at things and such a small paradigm of what they had experienced and what they had allowed themselves to experience. So for me, it's all about who you're going to allow to let speak into your life and how you're going to allow them to speak into your life.
So you look for people who are expansive in their thinking,
Expansive.
regardless of their age.
They have experience, but they also have clarity of thought and a track record. Maybe I'm not talking about the most successful people. Maybe they don't have to be the CEO of a company or have started some kind of startup. It's more or less just the idea of, did they accomplish the goal that they wanted to accomplish? Did they set something into play, and do they have something from that experience that I can look at, learn from, glean from, take with me on my journey? Mm-hmm. And if they do, then that's great. And as far as resources go, the way that I look at that, I think that everything happens the way that it's supposed to happen. If you really are seeking the path that you're supposed to seek, and being self-aware of what you're supposed to be doing, not what other people do, what you're supposed to be doing, that the right people will come into your path. And I think it's more about just being aware of the timing of that more than anything else.
Yeah, I have an ebook called The 5 A's of Successful Relationships, and one of the 5 things is how you attract people into your life, and you do it by knowing yourself so well that when you are living your values, and because you naturally bring a lot more energy to your own life and how you present.
Absolutely.
So if you show up energetically and energized about something and expansive about something, then naturally that's who's going to be attracted to you regardless of age.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's a very
It's universal, right?
It is, there. I have to say, the things that the 5 A's is accept yourself. Mm-hmm. There is nothing more attractive than someone accepting who they are and being able to present it, good, bad, and indifferent. And being able, I had a conversation one time where I said, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And the woman looked at me and said, neither am I. You know that there are people who are attracted to you and those that are not. Then allowing yourself to really explore.
Yep.
You did that. You did that at a young age. And I do think that one of the things I will tell you about Trey is that he is very deeply spiritual. You were probably informed very religiously.
Yeah.
And evolved very spiritually.
Sure.
Yeah. So it allowed
That's
him
a good way of putting it. Yeah.
the trust. Yeah. I've been around you a bit, hon. It is my work, just for the heck of it. I take notes. But that actually allowed you a certain way of experimenting with your life and trusting that everything can go. And then appreciating relationships. I would say that in the short time that I've known you, Andrew, I watch the way you appreciate the relationships in your life. You're very, very cognizant of it. And it is clearly why you're successful. You could go into real estate and within less than 18 months become a very consistent producer, because you are one who develop. And then it's about the attracting and just allowing yourself that ability to sit into it.
And I will say one of the things that I think is very valuable when it comes to, or at least what I've learned of, if you're the kind of person that you're a millennial, you have an idea, you want to do something, you have thoughts and opinions on how things should work, and you know that a baby boomer with the resources, if they would just understand, and they could just come on and they could give you those resources and you could go make your idea happen. And you kind of have this mindset of the reason why it's not happening for you is because you haven't met that person, or they haven't, if I could only get this done, or if I could only have this resource. But I find that's the worst way of thinking, because you're waiting or you're making excuses on why it's not happening, instead of saying, I'm going to set one goal, with the resources that I have and accomplish that goal and do it the best that I can. And I think when you set that and when you do that, what's going to happen is you're naturally going to start to attract the people with resources, because they're going to see it. You're going to read it. You're going to pick up on it. You're going to say, that's a guy that took what he had and he did he did what he could with it. And now I want to add to that.
Yeah, the fifth A is action. Because you can do all this attracting, and you could know yourself, and you can stare at your navel all day long. But if you actually do not take a step, there's always a debate within the spiritual communities. Being spiritual is one thing, and taking that spirituality out into the larger world and actually testing it, testing your ability to stay whole in the environment versus a monk type of a lifestyle. And so that is such a critical part of self exploration, is making sure you keep testing it, and that's how you learn who are good partners, who are not. So I'll go there. Do you have an example of someone outside your generation, so older, but it could be an ex, or a boomer, who did not show up the way you needed them to show up?
So at this point in my life, I thought that my brothers would be, guiding me into greatness, right?
Oh, we're going to rag on the brothers on video, mind you. On video.
Love them to death. But I feel like we're both at the same stage, and that's maybe because growing up with them, I probably evolved a little bit faster than normal, and so I think I got to my 39 years of age at 28.
I was the youngest. Are you the youngest in your
Yes,
family?
I am.
Yeah, so I was the youngest. I had 3 older brothers, ranging in years from 5 to 10 years older than me. And one of my brother Bruce in particular will say of me that I was born 40 years old. But it was because they did everything, like I didn't have to screw up to the level they screwed up.
Right.
I learned from the good things that they did. They were really great examples in that way. So you are the observer that now is the center of attention, so you have more time to observe what everybody else is doing.
In so many ways, it's a blessing to have that, available
So
to you.
your brothers haven't been showing up for you, eh?
Not the way that I imagine, right? Everyone tries to imagine the best possible scenario, but I'm grateful for the scenario at which they are at in life. But I guess that if I could look at a perfect scenario,
yes,
I would find, a blueprint or a map. But we know that doesn't exist. Everyone has a different map, a different way to achieving something. But it's really on us to set that example. And
okay, well, what would it look like in somebody else? So what's the void you're trying to fill?
The void I'm trying to fill in terms of?
If these idealistic brothers had appeared in your life, what would they look like?
I would, follow them as role models. Look at the actions that they're taking and follow them. I feel like the same actions I take is what they're taking as well. So it's almost like that example of finding someone that's in the trenches with you. I feel like they're in the trenches still with me. They're not a step ahead.
Okay, they're not a
or
step
2
ahead.
steps ahead. Yeah.
So again, I'll ask the question: what's the void? What's that step ahead you're looking for? What are the qualities that you're trying to reach to?
In this case, running an organization as opposed to like a freelance or even a small team. What does a bigger version of what I'm doing now look like? And so I wanted to see what that looks like in operation, in action, so that I could, take value from it.
I was just on a call this morning where they actually laid out the different sizes as a business grows and how you add people in, especially in the virtual organizations. So I'll be able to share some of that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
As always, adding value.
Yes, right. Yeah, right. And for yourself?
I don't know if it's so much of feeling. The original question was, what word did you use? Let down, or was it let down?
So, regardless of the generation, like those older than you in business so far, or in other aspects of your life, in the nonprofit sector, where have they let you down?
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I don't know if I look at it so much as them letting me down, as much as I look at it as me probably having unrealistic or the wrong expectations of them. And I think that's just been a learning process on, just because somebody's older with money, that doesn't mean anything. Right. Like, it doesn't.
And there's been a line that's been circling around my work and my life for the last few weeks, that expectation is the training ground of resentment. And and that's a very good point, though, for you to realize that, the reason I feel disappointed in this relationship is because I held an expectation. And it's fine to hold expectations, but that's where the same qualities of having a goal, having clear objectives as to what is this relationship supposed to be, who will do what part. It's wonderful to have very loose flowing conversations, but just as you experienced with your friends, there comes a point where just all the brainstorming, it isn't much fun if it doesn't actually turn into a thunderstorm.
It actually becomes very, I use the analogy, it's like sweet when you eat it, but then it's like sand in your stomach, and it tastes good to have the conversations and to dream.
But it's got to turn into something.
But when after a while, it just begins to get heavy. And I think that's a lot of people. I mean, I think if there's anybody that's going through a situation where they're frustrated with relationships in their life, I would, 9 times out of 10, I would probably think it's probably their expectations of that other person, and what they should be doing this, they should be doing that, I should have this promotion because this person should notice this, and as long as they hold those things, they're going to continue to feel.
You have no idea how many times I will say to a client when they start in, I had expected, what I thought was, didn't happen, and I'll say, well, did you actually have that conversation? Did they know that was the expectation of that job or that particular project? No, their background was XYZ. It was as though, like, when they were planted here, they would now know everything they're supposed to do. It takes so little time to set those expectations up front, and it makes relationships across the board so much easier.
I will say, Andrea, so I worked with a guy who we started he started it in California, and then he was in the process of starting it in Vegas. It was a kettle corn popcorn. Yeah. Yep. He was, I guess he was a baby boomer, 37, 38. No, what is that?
Oh,
age?
no, that's that's a Y.
Y? So there's one in between baby boomers and millennials. Okay, so he was in between. Anyway, he had started this very multi-million-dollar company in Vegas, and he had just taken on a partner when he had came to Vegas, right? So I'd met both. One guy had never done
Gen X's, I think.
One of the guys had never done the business, and then he had done the business before, but they were kind of partnering up. And so when I came on board, I was kind of getting the spiel from both of them.
And how old were you then?
I was 26.
Okay.
Anyway, he was the one guy that had never done the business. He was telling me, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be this, it's going to be blah, blah, blah. He built up these expectations that were like, this is going to be amazing. You're going to be stinking rich. And I'm like, awesome,
And sugaring popcorn.
But I'm smart enough to realize, I'm like, it's not all that great. But I was very fascinated by his partner, which I hadn't gotten to speak with him very much, but I watched him a little bit, and I was like, I'm very fascinated by him. And I just instinctively knew, I'm like, this is the guy with the know-how. Like, he's the one that's done this before.
Right.
And so I worked for a few weeks, and then really got into the business, started buying some stuff to run my own and kind of branch into my own leg of it. And while I was doing that, I finally got to sit down with this other guy. After actually it was probably about a month and a half went by, and I was kind of disheartened by what the guy had told me and what had happened.
Sure.
When I sat down with this other guy, the guy that started, I finally got to talk to him, and he laid out very clearly, what the plan was, where we were going, what to expect, and he said, this is going to be it wasn't as glamorous. It was actually, it was like,
right.
But what I learned something that day from him was that when you lay out that very clear roadmap, you just set yourself up in your relationships for success, because it's very clear as to where you're going and what you're doing, and it's not selling on hype or anything like that. So I appreciated that from someone older that I was doing business with.
Right.
Was just that ability to say, okay, look, here's all the negative things, here's all the bad parts, here's all the challenges that's going to come. This is what it is. And then that way, when I was working, I wasn't as let down, because I wasn't expecting all these other things.
And you ended up doing okay in that business.
Yeah, I mean, it was great for what it was, and I learned, we learned how to, manage people, manage time clock to get in the right place. Like, a lot of good things I learned from it, and also just watching and listening, and as he was telling me stories about how they did it in California, and too much manual labor for me when I was starting
Too much
it.
butter, sugar, and
I was
and
like,
popcorn.
I mean, I'm a millennial. I don't like to work. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I don't think so. I know that not to be true. I know that not to be
But
true.
yeah, this about expectations.
Right.
It's kind of very vivid to me.
So let me just divert for a moment, because Andrew, I know that you have been doing some videos at Cana House, or what's
Yeah, so it's Cana Villages. That's the housing, and that's the for-profit housing division. And then we also have the Grace Center, which is our nonprofit that we started. That's feeding I'd say about 2,000 people a month now.
Cool.
Like a bag of like weekly groceries. So we've actually become one of 3 Square's top 5 providers.
Oh, cool.
And they're actually telling people this is the model in which we want people to do it. So they're
Perfect.
using us as kind of like that, the model, and like, hey, this is a good way of distributing food, because we make it into like an atmosphere. It's like a family
But
vibe.
the question that I have for you is about expectations, because within social systems that are helping social systems, as the type that you are working in, and what you have a huge goal. How do you set realistic expectations of someone coming from unemployed, without a home, into a process? Like, how do you hold someone accountable in that situation?
Leadership, motivation.
Okay.
Leadership. If you
So
have
the leadership takes on the impetus of inspiring,
creating culture,
creating culture.
creating a culture, creating a centralized message, creating something. I find that churches
Same
are
way you build all good companies.
Yep. Churches are really good at this with the disenfranchised, because you give a centralized theme,
Right.
a message that you can believe in and that you can aspire to, to live out.
Sure.
But I find that a lot of times that falls short if you don't have the components of life as well, such as getting a job, such as having components of life that, no matter what
Getting
you
your
believe,
clothes washed.
no matter what you believe in, like there's certain human things that we all have
That's
to
right.
do, and setting goals. So what I find is the more people you get involved to create that culture, the better. And then to answer your question, you set that reference, I think, by R&D, and just I've been around a lot of these institutions, a lot of houses. I've met people that I've seen houses that work, houses that don't, why they worked, why they didn't, and looking at what it is. And then at the same time, it's a lot of times it's vetting people before they even enter.
Yeah, and Andrew, that's what I feel that you've done so successfully with the platform you're creating. You didn't, just because you could have gone home 2 years ago and started a YouTube channel and started putting video up, you did not do it that way. Instead, you put together a complete plan as to who am I, what's the product and service I want to deliver, what's the quality. You thought about the story of who you were first and what you wanted your business to be before you actually engaged in it. And I think that's something that maybe not all people your age, people in their 20s, give enough value to, because we value so highly the most creative, they did that overnight.
Well, you get the thing now is like, let me get my website and my graphic and my logo, and I'm good to go. And it's like, and that's the hard part. Yeah, no, it's really. And then
I agree.
You set it up and you expect all of your friends, because you put it on your Facebook, and then you expect the 3,000 followers that you have on your Facebook to support a business or to support something, and it's, you just like,
Why?
yeah, they don't really want to buy it. It's like, why do my friends want to buy it?
Yeah, I've encountered a lot of that.
So.
So is there any concluding things that you want to make sure that you get out there before I close up?
Yeah, it's really hard to start something. When I just launched a YouTube channel, and everyone asked me what's your YouTube channel, and I don't have one. Now I have one finally. I was taking the time to create something that was worth watching, and we just launched our first episode, and there's a bunch of mistakes. We're learning a ton from it, but now we've started, and it's even harder to keep going and keep the interest and keep it entertaining and valuable at the same time. And now I feel like I'm comfortable enough to put out content and shoot videos and continue to tell stories. So timing is everything. I feel that if we can leverage time with experience through baby boomers, then millennials and baby boomers can both take advantage of the infinite amount of resources we have in this world.
Yeah, and I want to say that that's always what I thought the greater value that I brought to my consulting clients was that I not only had the education in how to do what I do, but I also owned operating businesses throughout my adult life. And I feel that what you've done in being able to deliver that service and help people tell their story through video, and then working the process yourself, is that value that you are showing what works and how hard it is to get it to work.
I'm eating my own dog food.
You are eating your own dog food, and it's good. Yeah. Any last things?
Yeah, I think that it's, at the end of the day, you know, being very clear with what you want to accomplish, setting that goal, allowing yourself to be open to things that are around you and inside of you. I think a lot of people try to go inwards, but sometimes you also have to look outwards too at the same time.
Sure.
And just like everything we talked about, allowing those things to come, because I think the number one thing that I think we can take away from the relationships of baby boomers and millennials is you need each other. There's an energy with millennials that keeps things going, but there's a patience with baby boomers that just allows for a beautiful mixture. So if we can really allow ourselves to both see that from the other side, and to say some things worth having take years of investment, and then some things that we want to do take a little bit of energy to like get it out there and do it. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen people your age that are like, you know, they have all these resources, but they're like, well,
we're not going to go there right now. What I'm going to say is ditto. I was going to close with something very similar. It is about the relationships. It is about the merging of energy and being able to value the different resources that generations bring together, and to do it with the highest levels of integrity based in relationships that you want to keep alive. So that's the segment for today. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to you being with us again.